Good evening, everyone. I am Professor Sofia Vasilopoulou. I recently joined the Department of European and International Studies here at King's. And today we are hosting this event as part of a series of events that my department is hosting to celebrate its 30th anniversary since the launch of the European Studies program back in 1992. So this is a major landmark for our department and for King's, and I have the pleasure of hosting two distinguished guests for this special event. We will be talking Spain-UK relations, UK-EU relations, and many more other issues. Before we start, I would like to introduce our guests. So to my left, we have His Excellency José Pascual Marco Martínez, the ambassador to the UK since August 2021. He became a member of the Spanish Foreign Service in 1983. And during his diplomatic career, has undertaken postings in various places, including Pakistan, Nicaragua, Australia, Turkey, and South Africa. He was ambassador to the Democratic Republic of Congo from 2003 to 2006, and deputy head of mission of the Embassy of Spain to the USA from 2006 to 2010. He was ambassador, deputy permanent representative of Spain to the EU from 2010 to 2015. To remind you, he has been the Spanish ambassador to the UK since August 2021. To my right, I have our second distinguished guest for the day, Lisa O'Carroll, who has been a journalist for 30 years working in Ireland and the United Kingdom. She is currently Brexit correspondent at The Guardian and has covered the issue since 2016, but also covers Northern Ireland and Ireland. So we have two people who have worked on EU-related issues, Brexit-related issues, and I am very pleased that they will be able to share their insights with us in the next 1 hour or so. I should say that we will probably finish the event around 7:20, as we said, because the ambassador will have to
you can fly away earlier if you want
to another event. So just a kind of a few rules of, or a structure of what's going to happen. I'm going to give the floor to the ambassador to talk to you for a few minutes. Then I have prepared a few questions. We will be in conversation, and we want to make this event as interactive as possible. So you are very welcome to raise your hand, ask questions, but obviously there will be a questions and answers session towards the end. So without further ado, the floor is yours.
This doesn't work. Does it work?
Yeah.
¿It does? You hear? Okay. Bueno, pues buenas tardes a todos. Good evening to everybody. I'm really happy to be sharing these minutes with you, and I feel already energized by the electricity in the room. So much youth. As you have heard from my biography, I come from a prehistoric age. I started working in 1983. I'm sure that Lisa and Sofia and myself, we want to make this a good experience for you. My goal is for you to have a good time and a useful time, and so I think that you should interrupt us at any time, and it should be a dialogue among us three, but also you should interrupt with your, not interrupt, you should participate with your questions and steer the debate, because we have got Brexit as a topic, and of course Lisa thinks that it is a very important subject, and it's a very interesting subject, but it is also I've been working for 6.5 years on it, and it's so boring, you know. There are so many things out there that we can talk about, and yeah, I started in 1983. I was 25 when I opened the door of my house in Islamabad, and of course I had no furniture. It was another century. So my things arrived, my few things, because I bought what I could, arrived 3 months later by a slow boat. So I lived for 3 months in a house that had like 3 inches of muddy water because it was the monsoon season. And I went into this empty house, I opened the kitchen, and this swarm of really big brown cockroaches with wings flew out of the kitchen. And that was my first introduction to Pakistan.
So you should be on I'm a Celebrity next.
Yeah, I'm envious of. Yeah, but as I'm not a celebrity, I don't have a safe word. Anyway, it was a very different world, from the one we have today. In many ways, for example, fax hadn't been invented. I'm not talking here about the internet or email, or the fax hadn't been invented. So, and telephone communications, I would spend once a week, I would pour myself a scotch and sit near the phone and try for 40, 50 minutes to get a connection to Spain on the telephone. And the first siphon machine I used was, I think it was, it was older than the Enigma, than the German Enigma machines, because it was based on 2 books and on strips of paper that we had to decode, and we could send a telegram each week, and they wouldn't understand anything in Madrid, because I would always lose my way on the cipher. It would be completely incomprehensible. But not only technologically, it was a very different world. In pure, brute demographic terms, it was very different. The world in which I started working as a diplomat had 4.5 billion people. And you saw the other day that we have passed the 8 billion mark. And I don't want at all to be Malthusian or deterministic or whatever, but size counts. And 8 billion people is very different from 4.5 billion people. Do you know how long it has taken us to add the last billion people? How long?
10 years, I think, 11 years.
11 years. 11 years to add 1 billion people. And you will do it too, but I've traveled the world, not only in space, which is a lot easier now, but I've traveled it in time. Because first of all, I've traveled it for the last 40 years, and secondly, Pakistan was a country that lived in the 18th century. It was like time travel to go to Pakistan in the 1980s. The Russians were in Afghanistan. It was full of spies and would-be assassins, but also you would travel around the country during Ramadan, and you would be transported to the 18th century, to Rumi country. So traveling in time and space, you realize the impact of 8 billion people. And as you know, every demographic transition or milestone in humanity, not only demographic, but technological, because it all comes together, the package, the economic, technological, demographic package, it all comes together. It has brought on crises. And we had the Sumerian cities with the first zootic viral infections and the first epidemics, and you have them once again with Rome and Byzantium and the plague in the Europe that was moving into the Renaissance. Those are times of crisis and of change. So now we have 8 billion people, and Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, says that it's a triumph for our species, which I suppose it is. We should take things positively, but I suppose that rabbits and those brown cockroaches in Pakistan could also say that at a certain point in time that there are a lot of them. But they are also a species, and they've got the right to be on this earth. 8 billion, it takes a lot of adjusting, and it will be you who will have to adjust and adjust your world to 8 billion people who are a lot more connected, more active, richer, Unfortunately, there is a lot of poverty still in the world, but all in all, the GNP, the world GNP, grows every year and has been growing exponentially in the last 150 years. And richer means that one person occupies a space of 10, and more connected, that that person occupies also the communications space of 10. But also with incredible disparities in wealth, in access to money, in access to energy, in access to water, in temperature, because parts of the world are becoming unlivable. So all in all, I really think with my experience that we cannot look at the recent crises, you know, the financial crisis, the pandemic, now the Ukraine. You can look them at isolated events, but you can also look at them from the point of view of a change in paradigm, and what the professor now in Columbia University calls a polycrisis, where risks start to synchronize and you go through a very difficult period. And I've got here a few harbingers of doom, but of course you all know them. We talked about zoonotic viral diseases, and it is, frankly, one, as Oscar Wilde would say, to have one pandemic is unfortunate. To have two starts to be negligence. And we have had three in the last few years. And avian flu is coming back, it seems. And we have got the problem with water. We have got climate change, which is the crisis of our times. We have got geopolitical instability, loose talk about nuclear weapons. It's incredible. I've lived through a time when it was considered completely taboo to mention using nuclear weapons. And now we're talking about them like, we are saying, what will be our response if there is a nuclear attack in the UK? We are all crazy. We have got a crisis in the capitalist system, which has evolved and passed through many crises, but it is going through a crisis. It's not the time today maybe to analyze that, but it's clearly there is a change of model there. And all this is leading also to great political turmoil, to a rise in populism, authoritarian regimes. I'm going to stop here because I'm really being very bad. I'm here to talk with you too and to listen to you, so I don't want to take more of your time. But I just wanted to say that, well, I'm ready here to explore any of these questions with you, and also the Northern Ireland Protocol and Brexit, of course. Mm-hmm. And to say that the other day I was in a very special seminar with very clever people and also very rich people from some of the biggest hedge funds in the city. And all of us were asked, we were given a very good dinner with very expensive wines, but we had to sing a bit for our dinner, and we were asked to say, and I'll finish with this, one good thing, one cause for optimism in the last few months and years. And I said that the last few years, and especially the last 3 or 4 years, have proved the value of freedom, the value of being, of our tradition, of our Western, not geographical because it belongs to the world, but the Western civilization, tradition of democracy, of zone politikon, of we organize our own affairs and the life of the city to which we belong. And we have got the dictators everywhere who have mismanaged the pandemic, mismanaged the financial crisis, embarked on wars of aggression and completely pointless and which are harming seriously their countries. We see that they are incapable of rectifying. I'm going to talk openly about China. I mean, the strategy was wrong, but it was so in many other countries, in many Western countries. But in our countries, the people in government rectified because they had public opinion and voters to respond to. In China, they are stuck with the wrong strategy, they are stuck with the wrong vaccine, and people are suffering, and they are coming out in the streets. And I gave that example, but I could give several. I mean, Putin it's a clear example. So I think that you have got to reorganize the world and readjust this world, which is now a bit in crisis, and which is changing more quickly than it has done in a long time. From my point of view, historical time is accelerating this decade. You have got to reorganize the world. I think that the challenge remains the same. The challenge remains freedom, political freedom, social freedom, economic freedom. And with that, I finish these words. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for these introductory remarks, which I'm sure provide a lot of food for thought for our conversation today. And actually, I just wanted to pick up on one of those points made, which is there are a number of challenges that we are facing, be it climate change, as you mentioned, be it international migration, potentially linked to aspects of related to climate change, economic challenges, and so on. And perhaps one way of dealing with these challenges is international collaboration, yet we do find quite a lot of backlash against international collaboration, voting for populist parties and so on across the world. So I was just wanted to maybe ask Lisa, where do you think we stand on this? Can we actually resolve this issue? Obviously you've been working on Brexit for many years, so what's your take?
That's a very big question. Can I just start by saying it's wonderful to be here. I just love the fact that I'm looking out at the future and there are so many women here, which is glorious. So wish you all success. I don't know what subjects you're studying, but if anybody wants to come into journalism, please do ask me a question or talk to me afterwards. Can I just pick up on a few points to the ambassador first? Brexit is boring to people who are not affected by Brexit. I am a reporter, so I talk to people who every day who are affected by Brexit. In Northern Ireland, we don't have a government. There's no devolved government since last May. That is just appalling. You have unionists who feel under threat. You've got a fragile peace that was so hard won. I am Irish. I remember it. I remember the troubles. Partly retrospectively because it was all censored when I was growing up. So, BBC and ITV documentaries now showing what was going on in Northern Ireland are a shock to me. Because it looks like a war zone. We didn't see that when we were growing because it was censored. So there's a question about democracy there. It's also, Brexit is not boring if you're a business and you're trying to export to Spain. I was in Spain last week and I tried to import a few personal items for myself. They were too heavy for my bag. Some ceramics that your country's very good at. They're about a fifth of the price of Britain, but the shipping costs were just ridiculous. I think this is just Brexit. Yeah. It's put so many sort of what they call non-trade barriers in the way of business. You think that's, before Brexit you could just do that. You could order something from Germany, from Spain, whatever, and you could just import it. Also, politically, Brexit is still causing consequences in the Tory party. It is completely factionalised. We saw just 2 weeks ago that a sort of botched briefing to the Sunday Times on what looked like it could have been a sort of potential, shape for a fix for the Northern Ireland Protocol, and that's gone now. And one of the reasons, to come back to this question, I think that it's so disappointing to see that it's to do with communications, very, very poor communications in the EU, poor communications in Westminster, poor communications all round, and a lack of statescraft and a lack of leadership. Because let's face it, we are 6 years on for Brexit, and yes, I personally wanted to get off the patch. Coming back from Ireland, where I was acting Ireland correspondent in September, but it's just non-stop. So many Brexit stories. There's a ridiculous law going through Parliament. If this is, I'm not supposed to comment as a reporter, but the retained EU law bill, which is just giving ministers almost personal powers to decide what laws will stay or not stay without proper scrutiny or transparency, is ridiculous. The fact that you can't. You guys, Erasmus is not available if you're British. That's gone. That's dreadful. If you end up in the arts or the music business, you can't do summer work like all of us were able to do. So I think international collaboration obviously is working in Ukraine, and it shows that when there's a will, that the UK and the EU can work together. UK-Spain relations are pretty good, always have been, I would say. UK-Irish relations are better than they were, but they have been absolutely floored by Brexit, absolutely shredded by Brexit. And it's just terrible to see. It's all unnecessary for what? A high price for a small cabal of people's ideological goals. So not sure if that answers the question, but maybe we should ask them what they want to.
Yeah,
speak
maybe
about.
Sofia, you want to start, and then we can ask the.
Yes, I guess my first question was, where do you think UK-EU relations stand now? And I'm asking that because obviously we have changed Prime Minister recently. Actually, we've changed Prime Minister, we have 3 Prime Ministers in 1 calendar year, which tends to be rare, but it has happened. Do we think that now relationships will improve or are improving, or are we stuck in a kind of in a dead end? I'd like to ask you first, please.
No, well, yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah.
If you prefer.
Yeah. Well, they have been a bit stuck in a rut for the last few years. As you all know, I mean, Brexit was voted in this country, but without specifying, the people didn't vote what kind of Brexit. It could have taken many different shapes. By the way, I was the Spanish chief negotiator for Brexit for 4 years in Spain before coming here. So I negotiated the whole withdrawal agreement on behalf of Spain, and my job was making sure that Brussels and the negotiators in Brussels, who were also good friends, knew what our interests and our goals in the negotiation were. So it could have, you know, we talked about Canada Plus or Canada Dry or Norwegian model, or there could have been many Brexits, but Theresa May and the Conservative Party, they decided that they wanted quite a drastic one, getting out completely of the internal market. And we also signed the Northern Ireland Protocol. I think I should talk a bit about the protocol, because I was in the midst of it with the European negotiators. And sometimes some people in this country think that the Northern Ireland Protocol was a kind of trick or a trap that we let for them, or that we wanted, the European Union side in these negotiations wanted the protocol. Well, it's not true. The protocol is tough for us, as it is tough for the UK government. It poses difficulties for the UK government, and it poses difficulties for the European Union, because it is eccentric, it is out of the box. The normal thing is the UK leaves the European Union, there is a hard border in Ireland, and that is it. Right? But we all thought that preserving peace in Ireland and preserving the Good Friday agreements, which had been guaranteed, among others, by the European Union, was paramount. And that is why we bent over backwards to have this Northern Ireland Protocol, which at the time we signed it, we already knew that, I mean, we were doing it without looking too closely, because it was a bit contradictory and it was imperfect, and we knew that, but it was the only solution to keep the UK outside the internal market, which is what they wanted, and Northern Ireland connected to the internal market, which is what the island wanted and needed. So it was a sacrifice for us, the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's not a whim or something that we use to our advantage. It is something that we have done for Ireland and for the peace in Ireland. I wanted to lay that clear. So I just said all this because relations between the EU and the UK have been a bit stuck in a rut because of the Northern Ireland Protocol. Because, as you know, this government doesn't like it. It says it is not working right. At some time there has been talk about tearing it up directly, at others of reforming it quite drastically. The European Union is ready to use flexibility and to look at all means of an agreement, but it is difficult, and we haven't reached an agreement. And unfortunately, the rest of the relations cannot evolve as we would like them to, as long as this conflict is there in the open.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you. Lisa, do you think, what is the future of the Northern Ireland Protocol, in your opinion, and is essentially, to what extent is the credibility of the UK abroad, it has been, questioned through the UK, kind of the way the UK has addressed this issue?
I'll be really brief, because it is complicated, but it's easy as well. The Northern Ireland Protocol could have worked, I think, had it been communicated properly, had a team of people from the EU, from the UK wanted it to work, and had people been on the ground that January. From the get-go, everybody was exhausted, but that December 2020 wasn't when the trade deal was done? 2020, so January 21, there should have been, people should have been watching out for that. People were exhausted on all sides, and I'm talking about politicians and civil servants. And then it slowly unravelled as the personnel changed. Michael Gove, we lost out to Lord Frost, and then he had different ideas. That March, to me, everything is about communications, and it's about poor communications, poor statecraft, and a failure of politics. So I think it can be fixed because it's politics. Let's face it, there was virtually a civil war in Northern Ireland. That's, people laid down their arms. There's still a lot of paramilitary activity there. But I do think it can be fixed. I don't know how it's going to be fixed, but I think it behoves everybody to fix it. And I think the UK's reputation, having been in Spain and in Ireland recently, I think what the UK, I was talking to somebody at work about this today, was what people don't understand is how, not just Brexit, but the 3 prime ministers in 3 months, the mini budget, the rapid rise in interest rates, and kind of the basket case that the UK looks like. I had one Spanish person who said to me, "What is going on in the UK? It's it's decrepit." Like, that was a strong word. And in Ireland, I'm Irish, and I know a lot of people there. People coming up to me in October and just laughing, just going, "Is this great? What's going on with the Tory party?" And I just, for the first time, I didn't think it was appropriate, because the consequences of what happened are so severe. So the Liz Truss premium on people's mortgages is colossal, never mind the energy crisis and the cost of living crisis. So I can't remember what the top of your question is, but I hope that answers it.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And actually it brings me to a next question I wanted to ask both of you, which is, looking back, do you think that either the EU or the UK could have done something differently?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And in what way, Lisa?
The EU and the EU, there were moments when the EU were trying to get across a deal about, the border down the Irish Sea was one of the first things that was put forward in official circles. But the way it was communicated was poor. There wasn't, it wasn't something that would resonate with a voter. Or calm unionist fears. Unionist fears were just ratcheted up by the Tory party, which aligned with the DUP instead of, there's 3 kind of communities in Northern Ireland, nationalist, unionist, and then a middle alliance, which is growing. And the Tory party aligned with one. If that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be where we are today. Yeah. That's a short answer. I think it can be fixed. And
anything the EU could have done differently in relation to the protocol, but in general as well?
That is a broad question. You mean during the negotiations?
Yes.
No, the negotiations, we had our goals, and I must say that we achieved, I think that I've never seen, I'm a negotiator by trade. It's what I've done most in my diplomatic career, especially in Brussels. And this was a very lopsided negotiation where we held all the cards, and we achieved, 96 or 97% of our goals. We absolutely steamrolled the opposition because, we had all. Well, it is true. It is. Everybody knows that there is this famous photo of my friends, the European negotiators, sitting at the table with all the papers and all the dossiers. Sabine Veillant, who is a very good friend, who was the chief negotiator, and of course our leader, the French guy.
Barnier,
of course, Barnier and Sabine, sitting with all their papers and all that, and David Davis and his team with absolutely no papers on the table. You remember that?
I do, yeah.
That photo. And what could we have done differently? I mean, we offered all the options, and the Irish problem had a very easy solution for the UK to stay in the internal market or stay more or less in the internal market. Even today, one of the solutions is not to diverge from phytosanitary regulations. I mean, why would, I mean, this is not an official position. I'm just saying that I'm asking myself, what is the interest of diverging from European phytosanitary regulations, which are very similar to those in this country and have been for the last 50 years with no, that would help solve a lot of the problems.
But it became politicized, very politicized.
So we could, what we could have done differently, I don't know. I think the withdrawal agreement was very positive. At the end of the day, both the UK and the European Union were very responsible. For the Spanish government, the priority was the rights of students, workers, and residents and citizens. That was our absolute priority, and we got a very good deal there because everybody got their rights respected and pre-settled or settled status here. Also, all the British people living in Spain got their resident status. So citizens were protected. The stock, what we call the stock, was protected. I don't see how we could, what we could have done. The Irish problem, once the UK was leaving the customs union and the internal market, it was like a square in the wheel. How can we not have a border in Ireland when Northern Ireland is leaving the internal market?
But what the Tories did, however, was they continued to use, you know, the term they used for the other side, Project Fear. So with the Northern Ireland Protocol, they were able to talk about British bangers, and they talked to their, you know, their base, and it worked. The EU had nothing to counteract that, and then it just was let drift on and on. So specifically on the Northern Ireland Protocol, I'm talking about there was a failure to connect with what the people on the ground were thinking, I think that's a very strong contributing factor.
Why do you think that was the case?
So, you know, officials don't have, you know, Maros Sefcovic or Michel Barnier, very, very, very good communicators, but they don't have the mandate to talk about things that they think that, you know, focus groups will tell them will work and will, you know, hit a chord with the Brexit supporters or, you know, the Remainers, to call them that. You know, and The Guardian is a left-leaning newspaper, but, you know, us, the FT, the Times, versus the Mail and the Telegraph. The Mail and the Telegraph were running the narrative. So it was, you know, there was a failure to counter that narrative, I think.
Interesting. I just want to move briefly onto the topic of the war in Ukraine, and I just wanted to ask both our guests, do you think it has in any way influenced UK-EU relations?
There's a question up the back.
If I can make a short question?
Yes, absolutely.
We
need...
have a mobile microphone.
Yes.
I am very immobile, so...
Yeah, just pass it around.
My name is...
It's working.
Okay. My name is Adrian. Adrian, I'm a senior from Spain, and I was wondering to what extent can we consider Brexit as a catalyst of the future or long-term disintegration of the United Kingdom? So we've seen like the winning of the Sinn Féin in Ireland, and like currently the new advocacy of Scotland for a new referendum. Can we consider like
Is the question how much do you think it's a symptom of the disintegration of the United Kingdom?
No, like the main, like a future main cause of the future disintegration of the United Kingdom.
Okay.
Catalyst.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean that has been a big sort of political concern in Westminster for the past few years. You know, the Scottish Nationalist Party wanting a second referendum, but they're not getting that now because of the Supreme Court ruling this week. So, but they have said that they will use the next general election as a, you know, de facto ballot on independence in Scotland. And I think if, let me see, obviously Northern Ireland is completely different because, you know, it was a contested country, and Sinn Féin have, you know, the Nationalist Party are very, very strong south of the border, very strong north of the border. They became the #1 party, overtaking the DUP, the Unionist Party, in May. But obviously they're not in government at the moment. But they're looking for United Ireland, and they're looking for a poll on that. And I think Northern Ireland's future and Scottish future are kind of linked. If one, the SNP made inroads on getting backing for independence, that would embolden nationalists in Northern Ireland and vice versa. But I think Wales is very, very committed to the Union, and the Conservative government is very committed to the Union. So I don't think the UK is on the verge of breaking up.
Please. I think we need to move the microphone.
Yeah,
Sorry.
can we just have it circulating?
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, what do you think the solution to the Northern Ireland Protocol is? I actually live on the border in Northern Ireland between the Republic and Northern Ireland. Me personally, I think the Northern Ireland Protocol was the best thing to happen in terms of there was no good Brexit. There was no good Brexit whatsoever. In Northern Ireland, we are seeing the complications with the protocol. We have no government in Northern Ireland. Well, it's the alleged use of the protocol. We have the DUP who wanted and campaigned for the worst possible Brexit. The protocol is the best way to keep Northern Ireland its democratic wishes. And I think, I just wanted to ask, what do you think is the best solution to the protocol? The protocol, maybe in political terms, is not working. We have unionists disagreeing with it. But in terms of economics, we have data reporting that Northern Ireland is outperforming the rest of the UK because of alignment in the European markets.
Well, obviously nationalists support the protocol, but the unionists don't. So there isn't unity around the protocol. So I don't know if it's what would fix it, but I think it's politics. How do you get the DUP out of the corner they've been backed into? They're in a really tight corner. How do you get them to stand down and to accept a compromise? How do you get the British government to accept a compromise? The EU have said, and Simon Coveney, the Foreign Minister in Northern Ireland, have been at many events where they make it amply clear that the EU will be generous, will compromise. We don't know where those compromises will lie, but they're not even in a negotiation, that tunnel that they spoke of during the Brexit negotiations proper, because they're waiting for a political sign from Rishi Sunak that he wants a deal. So there are things that they have talked about: the green lane, the red lane. Sefcovic has said they're not too far apart on that. And let's not forget the Conservatives have not said that they want the protocol scrapped. So it's about dialing the whole thing down, taking the rhetoric out of it, and making it work, and making the unionists feel like their place in the United Kingdom isn't undermined. And the Sinn Féin, I think some people would rather Sinn Féin stop talking about a border poll, because that frightens the unionists. So again, it's politics.
But in terms of the border poll, in the recent election, there was not really any talk of the border poll during the election. It was mainly about the cost of living crisis. So
Clever Sinn Féin, that is, isn't it? That's clever.
About the border poll, recently.
I just wanted to say that I agree with what Lisa said, and that if we consider the practical challenges of the Northern Ireland Protocol, there are solutions, and the European Union is going to be there to find them together with the British government. If it is, in fact, economically, Northern Ireland is not doing badly out of the protocol. There are, on the contrary, significant deviations of trade and investment, which are not bigger because of the uncertainty around the protocol, but which could become bigger. So if we are talking here about what is really causing practical problems to the people of Northern Ireland in the protocol, we will find a solution. If there is, as you said, political and ideological considerations, if this becomes an ideological problem, well then, but in practical terms, I'm sure that we can find a solution.
I mean, just a bit of follow-up. There's so many things in Northern Ireland that can be, like the Good Friday Agreement. I was at a thing in September where one of the women, Monica McWilliams, who was an amazing woman, and she was one of the women who were involved in creating the environment in which both sides could consider dropping their arms, right? And she said one of the mistakes that they think they made was setting up the Good Friday Agreement and then walking away. They didn't have an implementation body. They didn't have a review body. And I looked at that, and Simon Coveney was at the same event and going, that's exactly what happened to the protocol. They signed it and they walked away. And that may sound a bit harsh, but that's what I mean. I remember that January when there were shortages of food on the shelves. I mean, how stupid is that? How did they let that happen? It shouldn't have happened. And there was no preparation. It was all, the protocol just happened and it was implemented 100%. And businesses didn't know how to cope with that. Therefore, they weren't sending their fresh food products to Northern Ireland. And on the Good Friday Agreement, there's some people who think that Pillar 1 of the Good Friday Agreement, which is about the Stormont arrangement, how the alliance, the middle part, the non-green, non-orange voters, do not have a full say in what happens in Stormont because of the Good Friday Agreement, that bit should be reviewed. So agreements are made and they evolve and they can be organic. Wouldn't you agree, Ambassador? As a negotiator, they get changed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, after 2-3 years of implementing the agreement, you look at the parts that are not working well, and if they are not fundamental parts of the agreement, you can always change them. And in fact, flexibility has been shown, and things have changed. And I haven't been to Belfast yet. I hope to visit Belfast in February, March. I was waiting for a government to be formed, and that's why my trip has been delayed. But I have friends and people who work for me who have been there, and they tell me that the message they get from 80% of businesses and institutions in there is that the protocol is not working that bad. But anyway, maybe the students have what do you think, other questions?
So I would like to open the floor for some questions.
Yeah, let us listen to the youth is wise.
Sorry, it's been too far. I have a question to Mr. Ambassador. So just a very unique UK and Spain questions regarding the problem of Gibraltar. Just after the UK has voted to leave the EU, the Gibraltar question even came before Northern Ireland question came. So do you see post-Brexit UK and Spain or the EU is working towards a temporary solution to solve this, like the news a few months ago of Gibraltar planning to join the Schengen area, but there's no progress for now? Or do you expect there's a permanent solution regarding this problem? Or do you expect any other programs or solution? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your question. In fact, when my team and I were in charge of were organizing for Brexit negotiating team for my country, of course, one of the issues for us, the Spanish issue, the special Spanish issue during Brexit was Gibraltar. And in fact, we negotiated. There was a Northern Ireland protocol, but not many people know that there was also a Gibraltar protocol included in the withdrawal agreement. And we are very, very proud of it. As you might know, 95% of the population in Gibraltar voted for Remain. They expressed a clear wish to continue to be associated to the European Union and to Spain without losing, of course, they didn't want to lose their identity, but they wanted that. And of course we had our own interests. It's a very touchy subject in international law, as you know, with sovereignty claims. So the protocol made all that clear, and also instituted interim measures and memorandums on practical subjects that impacted on people, like the environment or police and customs, cooperation, and it really was very useful to ease the transition. Now we are still trying to find a post-Brexit status, and as you know, because it is in the press, we have been conducting negotiations with the UK government and with the Gibraltarian authorities for the last few years, trying to find a more permanent status, thinking of the people in the region, thinking of how, first of all, I think it is very good to concentrate on what people that are there need and the wishes that they have clearly expressed on both sides of the fence in the whole region of the Campo de Gibraltar. It's a complicated issue with international law, Spanish national law, British law, Gibraltarian law, and EU law. But we have made a lot of progress, and we are optimistic, and we keep chipping at the remaining problems, and we are hopeful to find a solution. But it is funny because it's very different from Ireland, of course, but there are some analogies that we have used in our conversations with the European Union. You know, there are some analogies in the sense that what we are trying to do in the Campo de Gibraltar and in that region is to bring down walls, bring down barriers, open what were closed spaces. So, and we have the same difficulties, the customs union, the Schengen code, EU law, but we are working at it, and we are quietly optimistic.
Are there any women? Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing. My name is Yue Tong. I'm a PhD student studying European climate and environmental policy. And since you've been mentioned that the importance of the climate change in the world now, I want to ask you two questions. The first one is, what do you think of EU's role in the global climate governance or policy? Is it still a leadership position or more like a mediator after the Brexit?
Can you repeat it? The role of our leadership, is it to me what or what? What was it?
EU's role of the EU's leadership role in the global climate governance.
Yeah.
Do you think it is a leadership now or more like a mediator after the Brexit?
Mediator.
Yeah. And the second question is, how does member states in EU use their climate diplomacy role in practice in dealing with superpowers and emerging economies like UK, US, and China?
Well, that is a very consequential question and very important question, which is going to touch on you, because you are the ones who are going to swelter, let us say that. And I mean, the management of global affairs has been the talk of the elites for a very long time. We should manage global affairs, and that. But today it's the question of our times, because we have got problems that are completely unmanageable at the national level, even for a superpower. And climate change is the foremost of those problems. I think that the EU has emerged as one of the leaders in the fight against climate change. We really have poured a lot of effort in it, and we have put quite some money where our mouth is. But of course, the European Union is, I think, responsible for about something like 10% of global emissions. In the past, it has been responsible for a lot more, but now I don't think it is more than 10, 12%, something like that. You are the expert, I'm sure that you know.
It's in the third place.
Sorry?
It's the third place. The first one is US and the second is China. And then
Yeah, I know, but what is the percentage of emissions covered by Europe? I think it is in the 10% region. Well, anyway.
That's your exam question now. Christmas.
Yes, we've got to be precise. So we are convinced, we are the believers, let us say. Sometimes we don't follow our beliefs energetically enough, but we are believers. The United States has had a more checkered history, and under Trump, as you know, they left the Paris Accord. China has also, as superpowers tend to do, has engaged in the fight against climate change, but always from a national perspective. Superpowers tend to not like to be tied down by international agreements. It's a rule of life. We have got the Kyoto and Paris Accords and process and the Conference of the Parts. Is the system showing signs of exhaustion? The international diplomatic system for the fight against climate change. Well, people are saying after Egypt that, building a consensus among 200 countries, It really is too difficult. Anyway, coming back to the European Union, to your question. The European Union is contemplating more forceful action. Diplomacy is all very well, but if we really want to progress quickly in decarbonization, sooner or later, that is what people say at least, I'm not expressing personal opinion here, we'll have to think about a carbon adjustment border tax. And that is going to create big diplomatic problems. But we will. And there is conflict pending in aviation. As you know, 15 years ago, the European Union not only contemplated, we implemented a tax on airline fuel. And we had to take it back after 2 years because it was too contentious, and we had a big fight with India, with China, with the United States. But it might come back. Then we have maritime transport. I was this morning at the International Maritime Organization, which, as you know, has its seat here in London. Decarbonization is going there too, and it is. And then we have got, in general, emissions trading and countries that penalize carbon use and others that don't, and it has a big commercial impact. So we are maybe driving into an era of climate-induced commercial conflict. I don't know whether that answers more or less. Sorry.
Sorry, I just want to pick up on this and ask Elisa if you have any insights on the UK side of this question. So is the UK showing any leadership on climate change?
I would say you'd find more experts in this room than me.
Okay.
We have a team of 10 people on the environment. It's a massive, massive subject. Mm-hmm. We took the decision that, to cover it in a really, really big way a long, long time ago. I think the UK most recently has shown, and I don't know enough about the big politics, other than as a consumer of news. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be attending any briefings or anything, but the UK's reluctance to even have a campaign advising the public how to save energy is just ridiculous to see they're backtracking on that now in the face of the energy crisis. Its reluctance to get rid of plastic bags. I mean, this whole thing about a nanny state, and why is it even called a nanny state? From a consumer point of view, I think Britain is far behind.
I just wanted to say, because I'm really very passionate about these, and I was a legislator in Brussels for 5 years, because when you are ambassador in Coreper 1, what you do is legislate, enact EU law, and I'm very proud that I was one of the participants on the first legislation against plastic bags in Europe. And well, this is the challenge of your times. This is the fight of your generation, climate change. And it's difficult because you need global action, and it calls for drastic changes in lifestyles. Well, for me, they don't seem so drastic, at least in our societies. Because we have got, for example, we've got cities where there are no cars and people don't die. We've got Pontevedra in Spain, for example, which has been a pedestrian city for a very long time, and nobody has died. And I don't know whether people would really...
Nobody's died, what, from pollution related?
No. What I mean is that what some people consider drastic change, like really curtailing the use of cars in cities, other people think that it is not really so dramatic. That's why I said. But it does call for changes in lifestyles, and decisions must be made soon. So, for example, my daughter, who is 25, and by the way, she works now for the Commission, she informed me, and she's deadly serious about it. She informed me, I think it was 8 months ago, that after this terrible summer we had in Europe, that she is not going to travel by airplane any longer. So now, of course, all my holidays are... I like to travel local, but anyway, now I have to plan my holidays within train reach of my daughter, who lives in Brussels, and that also that she's not going to have children because of a decision that I hope she reconsiders. But she's dead serious about this, and I suppose that many of you are, and I think that it's right that you should be.
Any more comments, questions?
Esther, Senior?
Yes, thank you.
I'm the president of the SPA Society here.
Do you mind?
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm
That would be better.
the
Thank
SPA Society here at King's, a student of the Spanish department. And the main question for us regarding UK and Erasmus and students going for their year abroad. My year abroad will be next year, and we are the official first year to have technically no support or no anything for us happening next year.
No, this has been one of the worst, as you say. Brexit, of course, is not boring. The consequences of Brexit are not boring. They are very painful for some people, and especially for young people, scientists, university students, for the young. That's why the young in general voted against Brexit, because they knew that it was going to be bad for them. I'm really, really very sad about what is happening with Horizon Europe. I was the other day at Imperial College, where we had 3 sub-department heads who are Spanish, and they were all telling me that they were working with European Research Agency grants, and that they were very worried about the future. And the UK was one of the, I think it was the biggest single participant in Horizon 2020, so it benefited a lot from it and contributed a lot to it. So I just hope that the solution can be found so that the UK can participate in Horizon Europe. And as you know, unfortunately, that is a bit, that depends a bit on finding a solution to the Northern Ireland Protocol. And for Erasmus, you have got now your UK system, I think it's called the Turing scheme, but it's not a good fit with our system, so the end result is that Erasmus, it is looking bad for Erasmus in the UK in the next few years, and I'm really very sad because, you know, it was so good to have UK students in European countries, and of course Spain was the #1 destination. It was. and also so many Spanish students enjoyed spending a year in the UK. So I hope that through national programs we can find solutions. I think that
Sorry,
that
before
guy
we go
wants
there,
to ask
can
something.
I just say a few words about that as Vice Dean International? So I think it can reflect a lot on your question as well. I just want to mention that at King's in particular, and not only think on national levels, but an institutional level, we are doing a huge effort to maintain our internationalization both here, making King's a home for foreign students and European students, that they continue thinking that King's is a destination, but also to make our students, either British or foreigners studying here, making possibilities, creating possibilities to them to go abroad, to have their experience of internationalization as well. Among these initiatives, I just want to mention Circle U, that's a convention, a consortium of universities in Europe, that we are building up a bilateral or multilateral with universities, platforms that will allow and assure that this continuation of experience abroad will be in place. So keep an eye on that, students, because there are some opportunities and initiatives that you can benefit from, and that goes beyond the national level or the decision that governments are making. It's much more connected to what we are trying to do as an institution here. I'm sorry that I jumped there, but I thought that was a good opportunity to make an advertisement.
That was a great opportunity, thank you.
This guy has been waiting for quite some time.
Hello, my name is Bart and I'm from Board Sales Department. And firstly, I looked to the percentage because you were willing to know. I could only find 2019 and it says the emission is less than 9%. And
Okay, so I wasn't far off.
sorry, emission is 10% and
10%.
emitted is 9, and I have no idea what the difference is. Sorry.
Good.
Just interested more. So lovely. My question will be, as with the rearmament of Germany because of the Ukraine-Russia crisis, and there has been some talks about a unified European army so that Germany won't be having the army as itself and stressing everyone out. So what's the Spanish perspective on a unified European army first? Secondly, will the UK be interested in joining if such a thing actually happens or occurs? And thirdly, if such thing happens, do you think that it will it will result with warming of the UK-European relations?
Thank you. I remember having lunch, accompanying my minister at the time, having lunch with the Minister of Defense of Germany. I think it was 7 years ago, and Trump was putting all this pressure on European countries to increase their defense spending. And he was a very nice guy. He was SPD, unfortunately. He could have been Chancellor now, you know. But anyway, he said, I mean, Germany, with the GNP of Germany, if I spend what the Americans want, which is 3% a year, what are the Poles going to say? Because I've got two tank divisions every year and an aircraft carrier every year. What am I going to do? Yeah, the Germans, you know, if they really start spending in the army, they anyway, he was worried, the poor guy. I mean, but now we have all got to spend more on defense. It is clear from what has happened in the Ukraine. I think that the European Union has even a lesson in unity and solidarity, and it wasn't easy. And it has underpinned the effort to support the Ukraine. NATO has done a wonderful job, but NATO is a military organization. And without political unity behind it, within its ranks, it cannot do anything. And here, I think that, of course, the United States was there from the beginning, and Canada, but the European Union, we have very close relations with Russia, some of the countries in the European Union, commercial, and also we are all in the front line of problems, of energy problems, because we are more dependent on Russian gas, and geographically, we are sitting next to Russia. And in spite of the difficulties and the pain that has been inflicted on Europe, we have shown that we are very resilient and very united politically once we take a decision. So I think that one of the lessons of the conflict has been the strength of the European Union in the face of adversity. Now, a united European army, it's not for me to say. It sounds very improbable. For the time being, we all look at NATO, and NATO is the basic defensive alliance in the region. As you know, there was a summit in Madrid this year on a new strategic concept. But what we do need in Europe is a lot more coordination of armed forces so that we don't duplicate research, acquisition, training, and we don't have 27 different specialist battalions in night warfare in 27 different countries, that we can pool resources. And we are already doing that. There are new, very, very important programs in the European Union led by the participation of the 27 members, but the Commission is also very important in them, in pooling resources for research and development and industrial policy and acquisition. And I think that with the problems we have in the Ukraine, this is only going to accelerate. Europe needs to get its act together on the military front. It really needs better capabilities and to spend better its money. And of course, Germany will always be more comfortable doing this in a group way rather than in a national way, which is something that the Germans themselves don't want.
Would you like to?
No, I was just going to say I would agree that the idea of a European army is improbable, and from what I know, most recently there's absolutely big efforts to get a sort of united effort to train Ukrainians, and that the British had started that, and now everybody's going to be doing it together. And I think Germany also has been pursuing, as you said, a quite aggressive. It's arming at huge volumes of money, but I think what they have said and what the EU have said is that when the war broke out in Ukraine, that everybody, for different reasons, the stockpiles of weapons were very, very low, and I think the Germans went ahead because they were close to the border and they had the financial capacity before the EU took a decision to buy aircraft and stuff like that from the Americans.
So there was a question over there.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because now that there's
renowned focus on defense policy and on foreign policy. There was the first summit of the European political community. I just wanted to know, in the ambassador's opinion, if it can complement the EU's foreign policy, or if it can sort of undermine it, because obviously it contains the UK and other countries from the neighbourhood. But the EU has always been quite reticent to sort of have a common defence and foreign policies. So I'm just wondering what the ambassador's opinion on the EPC is.
On the political community, European political community. Yeah, well, my official answer is that it is a fantastic initiative and very useful and all that. I don't want to say anything. The French like acronyms a lot, you know. They like la nouveauté since Charles Baudelaire, le nouveau. It is fantastic and all that. I think it was a very good picture of European unity. Everyone together, in and out of the European Union, everyone except Russia was there, and that was a very powerful image. And images and photographs and our politics, and I'm have content. So I think it is good to show that Europe, all of Europe, is united in the face of a pointless war and of barbaric aggression and of so much really useless suffering. The future of the CPE, well, we will see. I mean, we've seen a lot of things in our times. It is difficult for new political organizations to consolidate, and there are so many of them, but maybe this one will have a very bright future. I don't want to say anything, maybe. But for the time being, it was a very good opportunity to send a very powerful message of European unity in the face of violence.
Thank you for today. From your experience, how and why does one become a diplomat?
I'm sorry, can you speak up?
Yes, sorry.
How and why?
How and why does one become a diplomat?
How and why?
Does one become
Become
a
a
diplomat?
diplomat.
Oh.
How do you get your job?
I don't know. Well, I got my job because I was very lucky. But and how and why does one become a diplomat is a good question. If the one is me, it's very clear. In the early 1980s, Spain was a country that was just coming back into Europe and coming out of a dictatorship, a country that was relatively isolated and poor by European standards, and I wanted to see the world, and I wanted to, to breathe, and also I wanted to lose sight of my family, because you are very lucky because you are studying in a university. I'm sure that you are living by yourselves and among yourselves. And I had to live with my family for the 5 years of university. And that was the norm in my times, unless you were rich, which we weren't. So for me it was an opportunity to escape, and I remember that we were offered, we had this system called El Bombo, which means the lottery, where we ask in secret for 5 posts, and then we are ranked in a list, and the first one that gets 1 post, then you don't get it when you are down the list. It trickles down, but you can have surprises and all that. And I found it absolutely fantastic, the Bombo, because I was single, I wanted to see the world, and going to bed without knowing whether I was going to wake up in East Germany, which is one of the posts I asked, Burma, or Nicaragua, which is where I finally ended, for example, in one of my bombos, was fantastic. And in my first bombo, I was offered Bogota, which is very pleasant for Spaniards, but I wanted to go to the most different place from Spain possible, and that's why I chose Islamabad and Pakistan, which was actually a very tough post. It's still a tough country, wonderful country, but tough. So why I became a diplomat is clear. Why people become a diplomat today? Well, I think that the line between internal policies and external policies is disappearing, and that you really have got to have skills that straddle both lines. And you have got to be able to negotiate and communicate across national lines, So that you, in a certain sense, you are all going to be diplomats. You will be posted abroad, you will have to live in international environments, you are already living in an international environment, and you will have to negotiate across national borders. The specialized profession of diplomat, I think it is, in fact it is disappearing in parallel to everybody having to become a diplomat.
Can I ask you, what country are you from?
Spain.
So you've got to join the civil service, right?
In Spain, if it is a practical terms, in Spain, it's you have to finish university, you have to have a university degree, and then you have to study what we call la oposición, which is something very 19th century. But basically it is a state competition where a lot of people suffer a lot and a few get awarded at the end of it their diplomatic titles. But it is the same in the commission. My daughter, the one that I was talking about, who has a terrible character, but I adore, and she has just passed the concours to the commission, to the European Commission. She's now working she's working in DG Comp now, terrorizing companies instead of terrorizing exclusively me.
But there are also programs in the European Commission for young professionals. My niece is on one, and she's in Vietnam, and she went through, she's half French, half Irish, but she went through the Irish program, and she got picked, but didn't hear for a year, and then suddenly out of the blue she has a job in climate change, and out of the blue the Dublin Foreign Office called her and said, there's this job. So she just went blind to Hanoi, and she is on the climate change mission, but just don't forget that there is a route in through the European Commission, through your national...
and there is of course the Blue Book, where you can spend 1 year as an intern there, and you're well paid, and it is hyper interesting, the Blue Book. And but any international experience you can acquire, it will be good, because it will be your life.
We have another one here. Yeah. So I just started my master's in European Studies, and I didn't know there were so many Eurosceptics, something that you're clearly not. But what's your biggest criticism of the EU?
I would say what Churchill says about democracy, that it is a terrible system, but less terrible than all the rest for Europe. You know that the European Union is many things to many different things to many different people. It was one thing for the UK, and it was so singular what the UK thought of the European Union that finally decided to leave it, because its idea of what the European Union should be diverged too much from the reality of the European Union. It's another thing for countries in Eastern Europe that have become members recently and that have had very specific national experiences, including 60 years under communism. It's another thing for countries such as Spain and Portugal, who have recovered with a lot of enthusiasm their European vocation, which they never lost, but they drifted a bit apart. We have always had a very intense American identity too. It's one thing for those that think that the main thing is stopping wars and conflicts in Europe, another for the technocrats that think that it is a very efficient way of managing complex international problems and that it could be exported around the world. It's a third thing for those who believe in an ever closer union, which is something that some people in this country hate, but some people think that the European Union should be an ever closer union and evolve into a political entity. And in fact, the reaction to the recent crisis has pushed once again the European Union towards further unity and further expansion of community policies. So as it is so many different things to so many different people, and it is capable of more or less making them all compatible, it is also very difficult to say what is its biggest problem, because for people in the eastern part of Europe, they are more jealous of their sovereignty, national sovereignty, than others, because they have lost it and they have recovered it. They have just recovered it. Or for people who believe in an ever closer union, the problem of the European Union would be not to be more united and to give too much scope to the Council and to individual member states. So you could improve it in many different ways, but to change our constitution, as you know, you need unanimity to change the constitution in an open. So it is quite tough. We have now a conference on the future of Europe, which is a bit boring, but not for the people who participate in it, but for the general public, but where these ideas are being discussed on how to improve our union.
Is there anything to add, perhaps?
No, not really. I think that was...
I think I had him first, and then I moved to you.
Yeah, but no repeats, because this I'm sorry, first the lady, because... Oh, sorry, I thought you were pointing to him. Okay, and then you.
I think, again, like relating to Euroscepticism, it's becoming a bigger thing, like day by day, especially in some of the countries that may contribute more to the EU, but to what extent do you think the issues in Ukraine may have changed views towards Euroscepticism? Is it still something, like, I mean, just views on Euroscepticism generally, especially in, I mean, sort of countries like France, where as well you've got strong advocates like Marine Le Pen, who may or may not have views surrounding Euroscepticism.
Yeah, well, that is a very good question. Well, first of all, Eurosceptics tend to temper their disagreements with the European Union once they are close to power. And it has happened in Greece, it has happened in Italy, where Meloni was very vocal a few years, and Salvini and all that, but now they are calmer, and I think Marine Le Pen has also toned down. She's not saying any longer that if she wins power, she's taking France out of the European Union. So that is one thing. Another thing is that people, I get a lot from people, I believe in the European Union, or I don't believe in the European Union, The Eurosceptic is somebody that doesn't believe in the European. But this is a bit like saying that I believe in potatoes or I don't believe in potatoes. Well, there are potatoes, You can like potatoes or dislike potatoes, but not disbelieve in potatoes. And people don't realize how much they are the European Union. They don't realize how different our system is to many other systems in the world, including the systems of very rich countries. In the European Union, you go to a hospital and they don't turn you back. You have unemployment benefits. You have more than nominal attempts at social solidarity, and you have revenue minimal. You have got, as I said, medical and social benefits. You have a state pension. When you see a policeman, normally you are not afraid that the policeman is going to shoot you or hit people, and angry people pushing around policemen, and on the contrary, nothing happening. So we live in a system of a welfare state system with high taxes, which is the counterpart, but a welfare state system, a system where people believe in society, that such a thing as society does exist, for good or for worse, and a system of freedom and of respect for human rights, which are enshrined in the European Constitution and, of course, in the Council of Europe laws. So when people say, I don't believe in Europe, I say, what don't you believe in? You don't want to have free hospitals any longer. You don't want to have unemployment benefits. You want to feel a bit more unsafe about the police, or what is it exactly you don't believe in? Because if we go back to national systems, then I don't know whether we'll all end up in the same place. So first you have got to realize that you live in a very special place in the world. I've lived in the United States for 4 years, and it's a fantastic system, but it is different from ours. There are winners and losers are really, they lose. I'm not saying that it is worse. A lot of people enjoy better that system than ours. But first we have got to realize what we have got, and then we have got to say, but I would change it completely, I don't like it. let us, and when you have referenda on the European Union, systematically you lose them because the general public doesn't take seriously the possibility of leaving the European Union or of dismantling the European Union, so they exert a protest vote. But I'm sure that the French public, if it was a really dead serious Brexit referendum in France, France would stay in the European Union and Italy would stay in the European Union. We have already, of course, one toxic issue in Europe and all over the world, but especially in Europe, which is migration. It is toxic, especially for older people. But apart from that, that is probably the biggest threat, and it has shown in the last few years to be the biggest threat to the European Union. Issues on migration. And I would stop here. It is a very interesting question. I think that the lady there had a, I don't know, Lisa, whether you wanted to.
Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I just have one last question. So first of all, it's really an honor to have you in our university. And my question is, what would you say main advantage and disadvantage on working in the diplomatic sector?
The advantages and disadvantages of working in
the main advantage and disadvantage of your work experience.
And this will be the last question, if you don't mind. I really have got.
It's football, right?
No. I personally am boycotting the Qatar.
Okay.
Personally.
Yeah.
You know, but it's very personal. I'm not saying anything. Well, anyway, getting off the subject, but I think the biggest advantage is realizing how there is this beautiful, as you are Brazilian, there is this beautiful book, El Mundo es Ancho y Ajeno. I don't know what is the British translation, by Jorge Amado. I think it's Jorge Amado. George Amado. The world is wide and strange, and it was a lot wide and stranger when I was in my 20s, and not only because I was younger, but because the world was wide and stranger. And you know, once again, there are places I've been to and I've seen that you will never see because they don't exist any longer because of economic growth, demographic pressure, and it was a very strange world. And it still is a wide and a strange place, and it is fantastic to see how we have different cultures, different ways of looking at things, and also special and interesting and precious and coherent in their own culture. So I think the most fantastic thing about being a diplomat is being able to, not to travel around the world, but to live in the world. And I was ambassador in Congo for 3 years, for example. We were talking about that previously. Congo is very real. For some of you, you might think it is very exotic to have a place, Kinshasa, for example, where 75% of people have difficulty having 1 meal a day. But they are real people, and very clever people, and fun-loving people, and sense of humor. The 65 million people living in Congo are as real as the 65 million people living in this country. And unless you live there, you sometimes forget that fact, that still 800 million people go to bed without having had a proper meal, for example, or without having access to clean water. But they are real people. They are not. Those are not exotic problems. They are as real as you are, and they have got ideas and cultures and ways of looking at things that are as interesting as yours. So that, for me, is being able, always as a privileged person and as a remote, because I don't pretend to live in Pakistan or in Congo and to really identify with the Congolese. But you can have empathy and you can learn, and that is very special. The disadvantage, but it is a disadvantage that you are going to have even without being diplomats, is that you have got to move around the world, and when you start to have a family, to have a partner, a spouse, children, the children, when they are young, they had a fantastic time in Congo. But it is difficult to find a partner that will put up with you and with your career, and to compatibilize both careers that gets tougher with time. And with that, I think
Well, I would like to take this opportunity to thank both our distinguished guests for sharing your insights with us this evening, and I would also like to thank the audience for such active participation.
Thank you very much. Sofia.